So last week I woke up one morning and I was feeling stuck. My head wasn't in the game. I wasn't in it to win it. Sometimes you just wake up on the wrong side of the bed and you don't really have anything that you can point to as to why you feel that way. You just maybe feel low energy, low motivation, maybe high anxiety, high stress. These are normal human experiences. And sometimes they happen no matter how optimized you try to make your life, no matter how dialed in you try to get your nutrition, your sleep, your exercise, all these things, your three levers of energy. Like sometimes you feel like shit. You just don't feel like you want to show up and do the work. And I had one of those days. I had one of those days last week, and it was really bumming me out. I think for me, I always feel that. I always feel bummed out when I'm not hungry and motivated to do work. These days, I'm just so blessed. I get to choose what I work on a lot of the time. So I really have nothing to complain about when, I wake up and it's like I get to choose the things that I do. And I realize that I'm so lucky to have that life. And so the times when I don't feel the energy, the desire to do the work, I feel kind of like even worse than in the past when I was maybe working for somebody else. And it's like, of course I'm not motivated to go in and do the work. What is this life? I don't love this, right? And that was a big impetus for me wanting to take control and get into building businesses, to be able to own my time, my freedom, and be able to have that control. But I wanted to share this just because it's normal, regardless of where you are, and you have to be able to push through that. One of the things in the past was I would succumb to that overwhelm, that feeling of stress and anxiety, and if I wasn't feeling it, then it would snowball into the rest of the day, and the day itself would just become an unproductive mess, which is just kind of one day turns into 2 days. When you wake up on the wrong side of the bed in the morning, that becomes the afternoon, that becomes the evening, and that has a way of carrying forward to the next day. It can be very hard to stop that inertia once it gets going. As Sir Isaac Newton said, an object in motion tends to stay in motion, right? If that motion is in the wrong direction, that can be very hard to stop it and redirect it. In the same way that an object in rest tends to stay at rest. And that's, I think, the part that I really had to figure out on this path towards building the life that I wanted to have for myself, or building the type of person that I wanted to be, was being able to get myself into motion. What they refer to this as in the physics world is activation energy. And activation energy is the hardest part of any system in a lot of cases, because it's the spark that starts the engine. And once the engine's going from its ground zero, no momentum, once it gets moving forward, then it's easier to keep it running. But that initial spark, that activation of getting yourself to do the work, to sit down, do the thing that you need to do, but you just can't seem to get to, that activation energy never really gets any easier to summon. Even these days on the things that I get to work on that I love, it's still very hard to self-motivate to actually sit down and start. I have systems and processes in place now that have helped me do that more consistently and minimize how much time I waste in starting, but it's still a very, very real struggle. And some days, like I had experienced last week, some days are just worse than others, and that activation energy is insanely high. And instead of just beating yourself up, what I recommend doing is just to remember this one thing, is that momentum cures overwhelm. And so the thing that we have to get going, we have to get that initial spark of activation energy and translate that into momentum. And once we have that momentum, overwhelm just kind of starts to bleed away, because now we're in action, we're in motion, we're moving towards the goal. The object in motion tends to stay in motion. Getting that thing in motion is the hard part. And so you just need to pick a small little task, an easy win, something to get the system going. For me, on that day, it was just going to the gym. I knew that was something that I just had to put on the shoes, go to the gym. That was the activation energy. Once I was there, I'd probably do the workout. It would get the endorphins going. I'd feel better about myself because I got to put a win in the win column. And then I could maybe carry that forward. And sure enough, I came back from the gym and everything was way better. I was feeling less overwhelmed. I was feeling focused. I felt energized again. And so that was the little win that I needed to stack in my favor so that I could snowball it. And there's a bunch of other little things that you could do. You know, you could clean your room. You could go to the gym. You could journal. You could take a cold shower. You could meditate. Like, there's all sorts of little wins wins that you could stack in your column that you could then translate into bigger motion. And so having that tool, that resource, that method, whatever works for you for getting out of your own way to get that initial activation energy into the system, I think that's one of the things that separates really high performers from people who are just kind of struggling still to tap into their potential. So I encourage you, if you ever feel that way, figure out what is the smallest bit of momentum that you could start getting to move yourself in the right direction. It doesn't have to be massive. Don't massive action is not the solution here. It's tiny steps. Like, what's the baby step that you could take right now that would feel like a win? Get that easy win and then snowball it into the bigger wins. And I hope this brings you a little bit of value, because it's inevitable. You're going to feel this way at some point. That's just the human experience. So buckle up. Don't try and avoid it. It's inevitable. All we can do is prepare ourselves for the days when we feel that way. And then, we have our systems and frameworks in place for us to get out of our way, take action, and keep crushing this thing called life. So I hope this brings you guys some value. As always, thanks for being here. I'll catch you back around these parts tomorrow. Until then, everybody, stay hyper-focused, my friends.